Lisa, thank you very much. Well, coming up, a local filmmaker aims to tell the inside story of Vancouver gang life.
I've been hearing good things about you, JT.
Collie, what happened? They shot him, kid. They're gone.
This will mean mortality.
Sir, this is going to be war.
If I can't have my son, neither can they.
So what you've just been hearing there was part of the trailer for The Line. Local filmmaker Mandeep Sandhu plans to turn that trailer into a full-length feature film. This Sunday, he is holding an open house and fundraiser with the cast and crew at Studio East on Francis Street. But first, he's here with us now in Studio 10. Hello, thanks for coming in.
Hello, thank you.
So what is this movie going to be about?
It's a story about the ongoing gang wars in the city of Vancouver, from the perspective of the Indian gangs, the Caucasian gangs, and then the police task force charged with stopping the bloodshed. So it's an even story based on all three of these categories.
Now, I understand this particular theme has some personal significance for you, so tell us how you once fell prey to the gang lifestyle.
Well, growing up in Richmond in the 90s, early 90s, is a pretty rough place. It doesn't sound like it, but McNair was a pretty rough school, and a lot of people came out of there and ended up in their 20s becoming in gangs or in violence and shooting. And we lost a lot of people in the 90s to murder.
And that was driven by the drug trade at that time?
Part of it was drugs. There's also a lot of bravado and people fighting so-and-so, and then somebody gets shot, and then there's a lot of retaliation, so a lot of retaliation killings. And then as people grew older, they became more elaborate as far as drug dealing, more organized, different factions separated off, and then to this day, there's still a lot of violence, and the gang problem has not gone away. It's actually become more endemic. It's more evolved. The gangs have changed, and the dynamics as well.
So how long would you say you were involved back then?
Well, no, it was pretty much from when you're like 14. You know, doing credit cards, like working at a gas station, and I was fencing stolen property. I was getting in fights. I was charged with pointing a firearm. I think I got charged with assault a few times, and it wasn't until 1994 when a friend of mine. We ended up in a fight in a hallway at the 12th and Cambie, and we were fighting these guys, and it turned out that they had knives, and my friend had been stabbed 9 times, and I was cut on my hand, and it was just a horrific scene in that hallway. And then a little while after, we were deciding what we were going to do about it, and it was at that point where we decided that we weren't going to do anything about it, and we all kind of went our separate ways.
Wow, so how easy was that to do? Go your separate ways and get out of the lifestyle?
It was, thank God it was early on. You know, it wasn't as entrenched. But I still saw people, like most everybody else was still out doing it and getting, you know, bigger, better, faster, stronger at dealing drugs and everything else. And they were still your friends, like you see them, but sometimes you go to the nightclub and they'd be wearing a bulletproof vest. And you're like, okay, well maybe I better not stand next to this person. And I remember there were some of my friends, I don't know if you remember the shooting at Loft 6, where there was several deaths there, but that was, you know, spraying bullets into a crowd, and there was many people I know that were there that night.
Wow. No, I mean, okay, so how do you make the turn then? Before you get to the film, because I do want to talk about your film project here, you ended up studying criminology.
Yeah,
so how did that eventually get you into filmmaking?
It took a little bit of time, I won't lie. It was a 15-year process. So I've been writing this film since 1997, and it took a while to get here. But doing my degree in criminology, I was always fascinated by it. And while I was studying it, I was actually going and watching the Johal trials, the Dosanjh murders. I'd go there and watch, and it was, you know, everything I was learning was being applied. And so I became more of a student of it and studying it, maybe as a writer, you know, to try to log it and record this all, and eventually make the story that I'm doing now. But it took a while for the degree, and then I worked at a federal halfway house for 5 years. And that was really exciting and interesting. I got to visit all the institutions and see all the people. Like when I'd go there, I don't want to name names, but all the people that you'd read about on the newspapers would actually all be there in jail doing their time. And having conversations with them there as well. So,
wow, that's quite the research project there. And as you say, ongoing, we all remember the Bindi Johal case as well, and the gang warfare that erupted here. So I'm thinking about the experiences, the real life experiences that you've lived and researched. So how does your movie draw on those real life experiences?
well, what I wanted to do with this film was not just write about these exact specific people and tell that story. It's been told over and over again in the newspapers. What this is it's an amalgamation of the last 20 years, and I've taken, multiple individuals and made one character out of them, and so it's like a synthesis. So of all the gang life and the dynamics, because there's so much that has gone on, and what I wanted to do was make all these characters authentic. So their background, so the characters were my creation, but their background I would give people things to study, give these actors newspaper articles, or I actually had one of my friends come in and speak with them, and he was a more entrenched gang member. He speaks out as well against the cause.
So what would you ultimately hope that viewers would get out of this film experience?
Well, I didn't want there to be a message. Like, I don't want to beat people over the head as a message. Well, pay attention to your kids and gang life. It's more of a mirror. I want people to be able to watch this and say, oh, well, that looks real. That's how it is. And then also I wanted it to be exciting. Like not just from a visual point of view, and tell the story, but tell it in a dynamic way. And it's not really about glorifying any of it. It's just to make it very interesting and very authentic.
Okay, that's once the film is made.
Yes, exactly.
So right now you've got some funds, you've got some investors, you're raising more with this Indiegogo campaign. So when do you hope to complete the project?
Well, we want to shoot spring of next year. We were kind of thinking about February, but I think it's going to be March right now. But as far as funding goes, we are still a long ways off. There's still a long way to go. I have the trailer, which is good. I have a rewrite of the script. I have the press. So this will all help get the job done, because filmmaking has kind of changed. It's not like the old days you walk in sometimes and maybe drop a script on a desk and somebody will read it and make your movie. Sometimes they want to see, well, what have you done already? And so, and I also want to prove the concept, because this is a little bit different than a Bollywood film. There's already the concept, people understand it, the investors understand it. This is it's a Canadian film, but it talks about Indian people, Canadian people, and then it has there's the Asian gangs. I've got the Persians, so it's a very comprehensive story. But one thing I will say is we really do need funds. So anybody that's listening, please go to thelinefilm.com and donate $5 or $25 to the crowdfunding campaign. We don't need 100 or 1,000, just $5 or $25. So everybody goes and does that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this whole campaign develops and eventually how the film develops. Thanks very much for coming in, Mandeep.
Thank you very much.
Mandeep Sandhu is the writer and director of The Line, a film about gang warfare in Vancouver. You can join Mandeep and the cast and crew of the movie for an open house and fundraiser Sunday evening at Studio East on 1480 Francis Street. It's from 5 to 9 p.m. Entry is by donation. 26 minutes.